Folks, a very warm welcome to the latest episode of the Healthy Gospel Church podcast. I'm here in Edinburgh, in Scotland, with my good friend Robin Silson. Robin, welcome.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here. Thanks for bringing us in.
Good. Robin is the minister of Winchburgh Community Church. Winchburgh is how far out from the centre of Edinburgh?
It's not actually that far as the crow flies. It's probably about 10, 12 miles.
10, 12 miles, but it took him over an hour to get here this morning. Such was the business of the traffic. But he is here, and it's great to have him. Welcome, Robin. Tell us just a bit about yourself. Who is Robin Silson?
Good question. Yeah, no, thanks, David. So, Robin Silson, I'm married to Annabelle. We've got 4 children. We've got Heidi, she's just turned 9. We've got Angus, who's about to turn 7 this Monday. And we've got Naomi, she's just turned 4. And then we've got Caris, who's 18 months. So it's a busy household, full of life, full of energy. They keep us on our toes.
So where were you raised? That isn't a Scottish accent I hear.
No, you yeah, so I'm
very
raised
sharp, I'm very sharp.
Yeah, I'm sure you can tell, yeah. So originally from a little village in Bradford in Yorkshire, a village called Clayton. Small village, used to have sort of clay, being a sort of clay mining and stuff. So, but yeah, I love Yorkshire. Loved being from it. If you could call me a patriotic Yorkshireman, I don't know if that is, but yeah, love being there. Still love everything about it. Raised in a Christian family. Mum and dad, I think they came to Christ a little bit older in life, but raised in an Anglican church from being young. So yeah, that's where I'm from.
Great. And when you left school, what did you do?
Left school and went to university. Went to university in Newcastle. Studied chemistry, medicinal chemistry.
Wow.
Yeah, did that for 3 years. Enjoyed time up there. It's good. Different accent again. Yeah. But enjoyed my time there. Wasn't a Christian at that point. I said raised in a Christian family, but myself, I think at the age of like 14, 15, you'd have said you'd have thought I was a Christian with the way that I'd talked. By kind of 18, 19, I'd turned away from that, kind of rebelled against it. And so went to university, not trusting in the Lord. I did 3 years medicinal chemistry. Then I did a master's in drug chemistry. And then I was this close, like a week or two from starting a PhD in materials chemistry.
Wow.
Turned it down at the last minute because I basically was doing it because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
But it's not the best idea for doing 3 years of study. So yeah, that was university life, but not following the Lord, living a life, as party central. Normal kind of student kind of life in Newcastle. You can imagine a party town like that, what you get up to.
Yeah.
So,
and did you go into nursing?
I did go into nursing after I became a Christian. I actually moved to London. So after I'd finished chemistry, I moved back down to Bradford and didn't really, was a bit sort of lost in kind of career, just turned down a PhD. Where do I go from here? So I started working in the NHS. I worked in waiting list management, which is, as you can tell, a thankless task. And
you did well.
Did all right with that. And then after working in that for a bit, I thought, I've got a master's in chemistry. I should really put that to good use, and decided to become a teacher. So I moved to York and studied teacher training for a year. It's actually the teacher, it was during the teacher training that actually I became a Christian.
Okay, tell us how that happened.
So I was teaching at a school in North Yorkshire. If you know the area, a place called Thirsk, Northallerton, that kind of area. Yeah, that kind of area. And it was February, and it was icy. I was travelling home, and I hit black ice at the top of quite a steep road. Went to brake and no response, and hit 2 cars, flipped the car over. On the other side of where I'd hit the car, if I hadn't have hit it, there was a big drop, so I would have just tumbled over the edge. And turned it over. Car came to a stop. I crawled out of the car, total write-off, with a cut finger, still slipping on the ice as I'm walking up. And about 10 minutes before, there'd been another crash on the ice. There was already a recovery vehicle there, and the guy who sort of drove the recovery man, he came, put his arm around me, and he said to me, the first thing he said after being in a crash was, he said, "Which church do you go to?"
Wow.
I haven't been into a church for years. And I sort of, in shock, I was driving my mum and dad's car, and they had a Christian fish in the back window. And in the midst of the crash, he'd seen the fish. Which church do you go to? And without taking a breath, I said my mum and dad's church. I don't know where that came from, because I haven't been there. And he said, I think your guardian angel watching over you. No, I'm not going to get into theological points about angels, but that's what he said, and it sort of shook me up. And it's kind of from there, that was the start of the journey, I suppose. I had a little bit of PTSD from the crash. I didn't manage to finish the teaching. I learned how to teach. I didn't finish the course, but it was from that point I started to ask the question, what if things had been different that night? And if I had have gone over the edge, and if I had have died, if there is a God, what would I say if I stood before him? Was the question that I asked myself.
And did things develop very quickly there? I mean, did you get into a church quickly, or
no?
What was your discipleship process?
Yeah, it was kind of more of a process for me. I kind of started to ask that question, you know, if I was stood before God, what would I say? And so it was kind of, well, I just need to explore what that means. I wasn't comfortable with going to a church actually going to a service. I just wanted to explore it on my own terms. I got in touch with a minister. I'd meet at his house, but I didn't want to go to church. And he just, over the course of about 3 or 4 months, every time I wanted to meet him, probably every couple of weeks, I was devouring the Bible, and I'd go to him with questions, and he'd explain it and take me through the gospel and what it meant, and then just simply, with great sort of clarity and relevance to my life, explained what it would mean to put my faith in Jesus. So I can't really point to a day, but I can point to a period where it became real.
Okay, so you went down to London after that? Yeah,
a few months after that, went down to London as a Christian, and wanted to. It was different going down and being in my mum and dad's church, but then being in a new city and wanting to it was that opportunity to make my faith my own. So I went to a huge church, Holy Trinity Brompton was the one that my minister told me to go to when I got there. He said it's full of young people. Just get plugged in there. I was in there for about 6 months. I started, when I got to London, I didn't go with a plan. The plan was that after a few months of looking for work and not finding anything that was suitable, I decided to train to be a nurse, as you do. Decided to train to be a nurse. And what happened was, as I was doing that, with the sort of a bit of free time that you have with being a student, I wanted to get help volunteering. So Holy Trinity Brompton had a work on a council estate called the World's End. So I started putting a lot of time into that and being around the estate and getting to know folk. What I didn't know was that work at the time was starting to move away from Holy Trinity Brompton, and there was already a local church there.
Okay.
And so over the course of 6 months, the group there moved to the local church, and I moved with them, and then actually moved and lived on the council estate. So I was nursing, getting really stuck in with the church. The church was a church plant from a group of churches called Co-Mission in London. Still going strong, and got lots of friends still there.
So did the HTB plant as well beside, and they merged into one, or what?
No, they had like an outreach work. It wasn't a church, it was just like an outreach work. And then some of the team thought that being part of the local church would be better. And so they moved.
So it's Co-Mission, Richard Cookeen, Emmanuel Wimbledon, that was...
that was they planted out of there, Dundonald, and then I think that was 1990.
From Dundonald,
and then there's a whole...
And did that give you a taste for church planting? Was it there you felt called to ministry?
I think, yeah. I mean, the call to ministry really happened from, I was doing kind of ministry stuff anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I was starting to get a taste of being in a church plant is, you know, you can't really hide because everybody's...
I'm just pausing you there. That's a great expression. You spoke more than you know. I was doing ministry anyway. And I love to hear that. You know, that's what call to ministry is. Not from, you know, guys who are not doing any ministry suddenly appear on the scene. So I just love that fact that you were already doing it. Carry on your story.
I mean, I only realised that now.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that at the time. I just thought I was helping out.
Yeah.
And so I'd had this desire to minister and to do the things that I was doing full time. So the way that, and you'll know this is going on in churches all the time, is kind of ministry apprenticeships. Yeah. And I think rather than, you know, people talk about the call to ministry, whether they have this kind of experience or voices, nothing like that. It was more, I have a desire, like a conviction that I'd like to have a go at this. And so it was more like test the calling by doing an apprenticeship. And then is the minister who's I'm really good friends with, one of my closest friends, Andy Mason, he sort of said this, you know, we know this, the 3 C's of conviction, competence, and then character. You've got the conviction. Yeah. Now we need to test your competence. Can you actually do this? And do you have the character? Yeah. And then at the end of it, is the conviction still there as it waned? Yeah. And so that was kind of a 2-year apprenticeship scheme. You would, you know, experience in
Did that
preaching.
work for you? I mean, there's a lot of debate about that, whether it's a
It did for me. Yeah. It did for me. I think it gave me confidence at getting feedback saying, okay, you've had a little go at preaching and you can preach a bit. Yeah. You can grow, but you can do the work of an evangelist. You can lead a Bible study. You can pastor people. All that little different bits of experience to think you can do this. Yeah. You can run a program, sort an event out, you know, those kind of things that are part of what ministry life is. You can do that. And then the character, you know, you have that kind of character needed that we see in 1 Timothy 3. So
yeah, absolutely. And did you feel that you wanted to do church planting at that point, or did you want to be an ordinary minister, vicar, whatever was in your circles at that time?
Yeah, I suppose I wasn't too sure. I think church planting was what I knew. You know, in terms of the churches that I'd been really in, apart from Holy Trinity, but for 6 months, not a long time. That all my sort of life in church had been in a church plant. Yeah. So it seemed to me that it appealed to me because that was what I knew. And I liked. There's things I like about the things that a church plant brings that maybe you don't get in a bigger church.
Okay, tell me what these things are.
There's when you start small, you have a relationship with the guys in the church that is can be much closer. You are a family who depend on one another, and that much in everybody in the church's life. Yeah, there's not people who you don't know, and so and that closeness of working together, and everybody's in. There's no sort of you can't just. I don't
passengers.
Yeah, no passengers. You can't coast. Yeah. You kind of because you stick out if you think you're gonna, you stick out like a sore thumb.
Sink or swim.
Yeah. So and I think that everybody's aware of what's going on, and there's kind of that togetherness, which I think it's beautiful to be involved with when you're part of that. Appeal to me.
Yeah.
Alongside the fact that your plants normally happen in areas where there's no gospel witness. That's normally the case. And I mean, what better reason is there to plant a church than people who don't have any opportunity to hear about Jesus now having an opportunity to hear about
possibly the main reason for planting a church is more folk become Christians through new churches.
Exactly.
and that's new churches are produced by new Christians are produced by new churches.
Exactly.
Annabelle, where did you?
So Annabelle was actually in Holy Trinity Brompton before me.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was there about probably a year more than I was, maybe 18 months.
So the irony is, she was. Tell us a bit about Annabelle.
So Annabelle comes from Lewis.
I love Lewis.
Yeah. In a small village called Lurbost.
Raised in the Free Church.
Raised in the Free Church, Locks Free Church. Great traditional Free Church. So was from that kind of end of the spectrum of church to Holy Trinity Brompton, if you know, which is large charismatic church. So
was the HTB experience good for you?
Yeah, it was.
What were the pros? What were the cons?
What
were the pros?
I think
obviously there's cons in being a big church. I'm not value judgment and that it can be impersonal and stuff like that. But also, I mean, it was lively. It was
very lively, very energetic mission. Yeah, there's this kind of the whole alpha thing is that their big thing of how to grow things, and there's a lot of, I think, a lot's made of the way that they would do worship.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can drift into that over emotional kind of experience. But at the same time, there's something quite refreshing about that you don't need to be sort of stoic and, you can bring your emotions to the Lord.
But it was a good period in your life. You met Annabelle at HTB.
Yeah. And then she moved to...
So why did you move to Scotland?
Moved to Scotland, I suppose. Well, Annabelle is Scottish, so I suppose that does come into it. But I think what happened was, as we were going backwards and forwards, seeing family and things like that, I just saw the need north of the border, and just who knows why the Lord does this, but He just placed it on my heart to be involved in reaching the nation, whatever that looked like for Himself.
And I think you ended up in St. Silas, didn't you, in the West End?
Yeah, So it's a great church, fantastic church, doing a great work in Glasgow. And we moved to Glasgow because originally I was put through as an Anglican candidate through the Anglican Mission in England, which is kind of another. It's not Church of England, but they're under the broader sort of global Anglicans. So I was a candidate for them, but wanting to come to Scotland, I'd said during my interview, I want to go to ETS because I want to know the guys on the ground who are gospel. So they said, right, go to St. Silas and you can go to ETS, and that was fine. I think over time studying, there's a few things that changed. Ecclesiology changed. I won't go into that because there's reasons for that. Just different things about how the broader Anglican network moves. And then there was partly I don't know if pragmatism is the right word, but I think the difference between Anglicans and Presbyterians is like shit. For me, is like a sheet of paper. Yeah, there is difference, but in terms of...
We're really close. We're like cousins, brothers. We're more baptized.
Depends on who you speak to. So,
because a presbytery is just a big bishop, a corporate bishop,
with lots of people making decisions instead of just one. Yeah. So it seemed a natural fit, and then it was through somebody at college who knew I was interested in church planting, ended up getting in touch with Derek Lamont, who was the minister at St. Columba's at the time. 2020, met in the Mound cafe downstairs just to chat.
Had you heard that, in church planting terms, that the Free Church were doing a lot of church planting in Scotland?
Yeah, and I'd noticed that over the since I'd first attended a Free Church in 2012 or something like that. Since that had happened, and then you just seen and noticed that things are actually changing a lot in those sort of 5 or 6 years. And by 2020, things had changed a lot, and you'd seen that there's a growth in this kind of desire to plant churches, them happening, not just a desire, but it actually being actioned. Which is just exciting. Wanting to, and the impact impact that has, not just on the plant itself, but on the denomination as a whole, is that it becomes more missional.
Absolutely. It's raised the whole evangelistic temperature of the denomination. We want to keep going. One thing that strikes me about the St. Silas story and your story with St. Silas is it's a great story of gospel generosity, in that it was an AME congregation, Anglican church in Glasgow, and yet, they fully supported your transition to the Free Church of Scotland. They were behind you initially. They supported financially.
They still do support the church.
Great, tremendous. That you see an Anglican church in Glasgow supporting a Presbyterian church in Edinburgh, and a Yorkshireman ministering in Scotland, married to a wife from the island of Lewis. I mean, it's really all good. Let's talk about Winchburgh a little bit. How do you start? Where on earth do you start? We're talking about healthy gospel churches here. So you're a newly minted reverend, and you just end up in this place.
Yeah. I mean, you start with, not all church plants start in the same place. We started with a team of people that were connected and built from what Derek Lamont had sort of built up.
In St. Columbus.
So there was a group of, well, there were a group from different churches actually around the areas. There's a couple that went to Livingston. Yeah. There's a couple that went to Kirkliston Community Church. Yeah. So a few from different churches, and a couple of people from St. Columbus. So there was a team already there. We have to bring it to the mix that the work started when, I'm quite unique in that I did a church plant and met Derek in 2020, and we know what happened in March 2020 is that I wasn't allowed to visit Winchburgh for the first COVID. COVID. So that's quite unique. I don't know if I recommend it to plant a church.
You planted it just at the beginning of COVID.
I started the work just at the beginning of COVID, which is a unique way.
Yeah, I remember being at your ordination in St. Columbus.
Yeah. So that started then. I was just finishing seminary and just doing like online monthly kind of meetings, and then we moved through to Winchburgh in September 21. Yeah. The team were there, and finally we were allowed to visit the place, which means we had to actually decide to go there without actually knowing what it was like. So we did. We went September 21. I think that the first thing that we did was just think, what kind of church did we want to be? What did we want to be like? And to not for me to come up with those ideas and implant it on the team, but actually get that from God's word.
So what sort of church did you want to be like?
We wanted to be, the three things that we came up with after we studied.
Not 3 C's again.
Not 3 C's, no. We after studying Paul's letter to the Philippian church, and there's lots of sub-points, but we wanted to be a church that was first and foremost in Christ. Mm-hmm. That was the most important thing, that we're connected to Jesus and that he's the source of spiritual life for all of us, and walking church life with him at the center of everything. The second thing is we want to be as a community. So the relationships that we have with one another, as we love Jesus together, not on our own. We love Jesus together and support one another in the ups and downs of life. So we want it to be as a community. And then the third thing is for everyone, for Winchburgh, but actually for people from the surrounding villages as well. We want it to be that. So, an emphasis on that the gospel is not, it's for anyone who puts the name in, trust in him. So that was the things that was the 3 headlines. There was other things, you got Paul's letter to the Philippians, the great chapter in the middle about Christ sacrificing, his obedience to death on a cross, and that we have the mindset of Christ. And so in the middle of that, we have the number one character trait of a Christian is humility. Yeah. Humility, which leads to prayerfulness and dependence upon him. Yeah. Is at the center.
A question I want to ask is, okay, you started a small group, you're studying the Bible, you've got fellowship together. Do you have a number in mind, or do you think that's fatal? Like you had 35 folk in church last Sunday.
Yeah.
Would you say we aim to be a church of 100 people in the next 3 years? is it good to have a number?
I think yes and no. It has the two sides to that. I think if you don't have a number at all, then like that can bring its own problems, because it's good to have some sort of ambition of where you want to get to, and the nature of church planting is that you know, you need to reach a certain number to just survive and support. And so there's kind of critical mass
to get to.
Well, there's critical masses for it. Look at when you turn up, so that it looks like something's actually happening. It's not just a few of you. There's also a critical mass just to be sort of sustain yourself long term. So that there is that in mind. So there's on one answer there's yes. On the other answer, it can be dangerous because to put a number on it, because you know what happens if you say, oh, we needed this by this point, and then you don't get it. It can discourage people, and you can think you can measure your own success by a number rather than what the Lord's doing. So
it's funny. I mean, I keep reflecting on my own approach to church planting. I planted 40 years ago up in Inverness, and I was really influenced by the church growth movement. And like most things, it's a lot of bad stuff in the church growth movement. It can be very pragmatic, very formulaic. But one thing that it did do for me was it gave me a desire, indeed a passion for the church to grow. I mean, it includes in the name of church growth movement. So, you know, I had this passion for the church to grow and this vision that the church would grow. I'm guessing that you have exactly
I mean, absolutely.
It's not a house church is going to stay at 15 people
no,
for
of
the
course.
next 50 years.
I think definitely we want to grow. I mean, we should expect it to grow. Acts constantly.
Is there something wrong if a church doesn't grow?
I mean, you've got to ask why, don't you? If we see in Acts the Lord added to their number daily.
That's a difficult question to ask, though, isn't it? Why?
It is a difficult one.
You know, as pastors, we take it so personally, don't we? Like, is it me?
No, we do, and we'd be wrong to do that. I can struggle with that. You know, sometimes when things are not happening, you can think, is it you, or have I done something wrong, or? But I was reminded just this week, going through, just preparing for sermons, how it is the Lord who does it. He's the initiator. He's the one who builds his church. Just going through Isaiah, you know, I have chosen you to be my servant. Sure. You didn't, you know, I've picked you. He's picked Israel at that time to be to sort of attract the nations, and he's chosen us, the church, to draw people to himself. But he's going to do it, and so we always need to be coming back to that, because we're always tempted when things don't go our way expect to.
Drown to a little pity party,
drown in our sorrows. Woe is me. And
how do you find it? I mean, west of Edinburgh, there's a couple of kind of big resource churches. You know, folk can drive 10 minutes to a church. It's got literally bells and whistles, and you know, how do you find growing up in the shadow of all these other churches, be they free churches or other churches?
I mean, if your heart's in the wrong place, you can look on them with jealousy. If your heart's in the right place, we're talking about, it's not about the growth of a church, but the church. Sure. And so we should celebrate what God is doing in those. And, you know...
Have you experienced your heart being both in the bad place and in the good place?
I mean, that's part of, you know... Repentance is constantly like, oh, look at them, you know, they've got all this stuff and we don't have this.
But you're happier when your heart's in that good place.
Of course, celebrating what God is doing, and knowing that, you know, God uses small things to bring glory to himself. And so if you're small but you're depending on the Lord and you're preaching his word and praying to him and trusting in him, then if you feel inadequate, which we can feel inadequate as individuals, we can feel inadequate as church plants. How are we going to reach Winchburgh? If you feel like that, then you're exactly the kind of church and person that God wants to use.
I mean, my idol used to be my church. When it was growing, I was happy. When it wasn't growing, I was unhappy. And that's absolutely pathetic. You know,
I get that, though.
You know, when my identity should be in Christ, I'm a loved, son of the King. That is so precious.
Yeah. But we just need to keep coming back to that, right?
Yeah,
we need to teach, to tell the gospel to ourselves as much as we do to God's people.
Who Christ is, No, but we drifted to legalism and works righteousness all the time. Some folks say, I get this all the time, church planting's a bit of a gimmick. That's all you hear about these days. Do you hear that? Have you how do you respond to it?
I respond that every church is a church plant.
Great.
Just some are 150 years old.
Every church was started.
If you think church is a gimmick and you don't like it, then then the church that you're in. The reason you have a healthy church is because 150 years ago somebody decided to plant a church.
Yeah.
So
great. So is a church plant different to any other churches? I guess the answer is going to be yes and no. So
yeah. Of course. So, yes, it is different. You don't have that tradition, that history of, that you can look back on of where the Lord has moved and, you can see all that. It's different. You don't have, some of the same, the relationships are different. What that means is that, you don't have a culture. You don't have a culture that needs changing. You don't have a culture that needs to celebrate it. You don't have any of that. But you're new, so you have to start a good culture. You're small means you have to grow. We all think churches should be growing, but you have to grow, or else you won't be here. And so there can be a little bit. Sometimes you can feel that there's a little bit of pressure, but that's where it's different. Where it's the same gospel. The same word, prayer, sacrament. That's what we're about. And so we meet as the same on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, in each other's lives, pastoring to the people of God, pastoring the community when we can, and reaching the lost. So same mission, different context.
Yeah. I get the impression, it may be a wrong impression, but some of the guys come and it's almost as they say, I would love to pastor in just a normal church where I can, do this exposition of Romans for the next 5 years and teach the people. And I always say, when I feel that I'm coming against that mentality, there is no such thing as that sort of church now. In Scotland today, every church, every context is a mission context.
That's right. I think that mission defines whether you're healthy or not.
Good point. Yeah,
if you're missional.
That's good, yeah.
Because if you don't have, what is mission? I don't want to get into the academic discussion of that. But essentially, if mission got, Great Commission, making disciples, but part of Jesus' mission is to draw nations to glorify God. And I don't want to substitute evangelism for mission. That's part of it, but it's not. It's more than that. Yeah. It's allowing the King to touch every part of our lives. Yeah. Which displays the impact that it's having on us. And wanting people to see that. So a missional focus. Yeah. I think that is healthy, and that should happen in any church.
I love that word mission. It takes me back to childhood, when I would get my toy gun and my little toy water canister and go out into the hills on a mission. I was going to conquer territory. I was going to defeat the enemy. A mission is motivational. A mission is taking ground from the enemy. And, in our context, it's taking ground from the evil one. It's winning folk for Jesus. That language isn't used much anymore, being soul winners and wanting disciples, people who are following Jesus. You excite me, Robin. You're that kind of guy. That's what you do.
You do good to me. So.
Tell me, what encourages you and discourages you?
Encourages me, I think it's connected to mission, has to be. I think it's not, it's when the missional output from God's people I know this sounds a weird thing to say, but when it comes from them and not from me.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I see God's people engaging in mission without the minister telling them to do it, when I just see that,
it's natural.
When it's natural, and there's nothing been said, or somebody comes to you with a missional idea and say, "I'd love to do this." You haven't even suggested it to them. "I'd love to do this. Can we do it?" When somebody says that, I just want to help them to do it and empower them to make that happen. And just that excites me, because it means the spirits of God's alive and working and wanting and discipling that person. So I think I get excited by that. I get excited by just seeing the word of God touch people's lives and seeing Jesus change people. I get excited by talking about Jesus.
I can see that. Evangelism, I know that you enjoy reading the Bible one-to-one with people.
Yeah.
Tell us how you came to appreciate that. How effective do you find it, and what's your approach?
I think evangelism for me, this might seem strange, but evangelism, it didn't come naturally. I was a timid, scared evangelist. Wanted to do it, but felt terrified by it. And so I would pray that the Lord would help me to become somebody who could speak about Jesus. And I found that reading the Bible with people was the way that was the easiest way to do it. Because the pressure was kind of off me about speaking, and that all the emphasis was on the Bible. So I thought, well, if I can ask somebody to do this, then I'll just let the word do the work. I don't, if somebody asks me I still do this sometimes. It sounds a little bit like a get out. Somebody asks me a difficult question, and I sometimes say, well, I could give you an answer to that in 2 minutes, but I don't think you'd be satisfied with what I'm going to say. Actually, the best place to look to answer that is the Bible. So why don't we catch up for a coffee and let's open it together, and then let the Bible, it's like you've got an extra person in the room. You've got you two reading it together, and then you've got the Bible's the teacher.
It's a conversational, not a conversational partner, but the actual teacher.
Yeah, he's actual teacher. So you just say, okay, what does it say?
I love that. Yeah.
And it makes it simple. I just find it made it easier. And I think it was from doing that I then got the confidence as we were chatting, to then actually become somebody who I could speak with normally, just outside of that. So I love it.
Have you seen fruit from that in your own life?
I've seen. I saw somebody down in London who drifted. I caught up with him and just started reading, came back to church, committed his life to the Lord. The guy I was met with just on the street, and just a Spanish guy, and started reading with him in a coffee shop, and just really brought him to think more about Jesus. And so it's a great thing to do. I think there's been a movement of that. Perhaps, there's resources now, Word 1-to-1 and different things that can help you.
Yeah, we were talking to Esther Dixon from CU Scotland. The CUs do Uncover.
Uncover, yeah, that's another one.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
It's just unpacking a wee bit more about this church planting thing. Imagine you're a member, you could be in a Free Church or Baptist church, whatever. You're up in the Highlands, you're in the Islands, Lochs or somewhere. No disrespect to these churches. They're never going to plant another church. They're not church planting churches. Okay. Can non-church planting churches help church plants? And if they can, how can they do that?
Absolutely. No doubt about that. I have connections with Highland churches that they're in touch. They ask how they can pray for me. Yeah. They support me. Sometimes I've gone up to visit them, and just the other week I did an online prayer meeting with Callaway up in Lewis, and just telling them about what we were doing and how God was blessing the ministry. They were excited to hear, and just we have a connection to them where they pray for us regularly. I think that's there's That's the biggest encouragement.
We're in it together. You are one of our missionaries.
Yeah, exactly. So they pray for us and support us and send words of encouragement. People, So I think that's the biggest thing is that with the Free Church of Scotland, we're not castles dotted around. That's why we exist.
Denomination. We're all in the same family. We're all in it together.
Yeah.
I mean, to take that conversation on, I was born and bred in the Free Church, and I have to say that these days are the most exciting days I've ever experienced in the Free Church. This is the denomination me and many others dreamed for, and we really worked hard to get. I personally love it. I don't want to be tribal. There's other great churches out there. I am where I am. You were not born in the Free Church. We're not big in West Yorkshire at the moment. How we doing? And a lot of our listeners, many of our listeners are not at Free Church of Scotland. Some folk like it, some folk don't. A lot of folk in the US, a lot of folk abroad. How would you describe the Free Church of Scotland?
I think first thing to say is I love the Free Church. I might not have been brought up in it, but I do love the Free Church. And I think the welcome that I've received, I don't feel like, I feel like I might be a Yorkshireman, but I'm just as much a brother as anyone else. Yeah. And so I love there's different ministers that I sort of are able to ring up and call and have support from. I love that. I love the togetherness. I love as I say, I love the missional outlook that we have now. Yeah. That seems like maybe that's new.
Not a feature.
It's not a feature. Not a feature. I love the missional outlook. And so I feel at home in the Free Church. And I feel that's partly because of the ministers in there, but also I've been welcomed by every congregation and supported and loved. So I couldn't talk about it highly enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's refreshing for me to hear you say, I love the Free Church of Scotland. That's not a bad thing. I'm thinking here about denominations. Are they good or bad? And I guess, again, the answer is they're both good and bad.
Of course, I'm too diplomatic. But yeah, I think the answer is, I mean, the great thing about us as a denomination is, and it's the same with any denomination, there's kind of a doctrinal unity that binds us together, and we have to have that. Yeah. You can't just sort of...
The confessional
identity that we all subscribe to, and that's... It's good to have that because we know we're all coming on with the core essentials. We're all on the same page. It means that you have like an authority that sort of guards and protects the faith, and so I saw it's a great thing. I love being part of a denomination. I believe in them. I think they're good. I think they're good for the health of the churches, and I think they're good for the health of the ministers. So I think, of course, there's you can. I've been the interesting thing for me is I've been part of the Anglicans, and I've been part of I'm now part of the Presbyterians. I think one thing that I've noticed, and this is just an observation, is that, and this is a generalization as well. And it comes from history, is that sometimes Anglicans, they can sort of go for unity at the expense of truth.
Okay.
Whereas Presbyterians go for truth, can do at the expense of unity.
Yeah.
And that we know that from history. We see so many divisions.
Interesting observation, yeah. I mean, a denomination is a bit like a family, but a healthy family is also open to other families and see how they live and stuff like that. We're coming to land now. You're a clever guy. Didn't realise you were a chemist. Didn't realise that you were into all that stuff. But as a scientist, I'm sure you also read books. I'm asking most folk this. 3 favourite books. I couldn't answer it because I don't have 3 favourite books, to be honest.
It's quite hard.
Yeah.
I do read a lot. Favourite novel? This could change at the minute. I read Robinson Crusoe.
Oh, Yeah.
Have you ever read that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly,
a classic.
It's brilliant. I didn't realize what it was going to be like halfway through. There's it's an amazing story of redemption.
Yeah.
And so brilliant. Favorite one. I suppose two that have impacted me in Christian life. One is the book Living Life Backwards. It's a book on Ecclesiastes.
Okay.
It used to be called Destiny.
Okay, never heard of it.
Great.
Who wrote it?
Is David Gibson?
Ah, not the David Gibson of Aberdeen.
I think so, yeah.
Ah, wow. David, I apologise to you for not reading your book. I will
It's a great, honestly, you need to read that. It's great. Ecclesiastes, living in light of, it's like quite a somber title. It sounds like it's going to be really hard. Living in light of death. But actually, it's just saying, if you live each day like it's your last, you will live a life that flourishes.
Sure, I can imagine anything David does is
brilliant.
Excellent.
It's so helpful. So that one.
Daniel Defoe, David Gibson, what else?
Last one's got to be other Christian one is I think it's his best work is Prayer by Tim Keller.
Okay, yeah.
The book on prayer. I think it's not actually. It's a funny thing to say. It's called Prayer. It's not actually a book on prayer. It's just a book on how to live the Christian life. And you realise that prayer is fundamental to living the Christian life, but how you approach prayer actually dictates how you live. And so.
Interesting. Again, just before, you've had some ups and downs in terms of health. You've had a wee touch of a black dog. You've had a touch of depression. Your mental health has at times, waxed and waned.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Where do you go in these dark times? Or where should a lot of our listeners would say,
no.
I'm there as well.
It's difficult. It's better controlled now than it was when it first reared its head. It's more kind of anxiety, panic attacks that can go into sort of like the black dog stuff, but it's kind of that. When it first happened, didn't really know what was going on. And you realise looking back, they'd probably been there a lot longer than I'd realised. I think the thing that works for me is I just need to go rest.
Good.
I just need to stop.
And recognise it's not a weakness?
Yeah, it's not a weakness. I think the way that I see it is, which really helped me, because I did struggle with the fact that it was there when it first happened. I think I listened to someone really helpful that said, you need to treat it as like you would do any chronic illness.
Yeah.
So you need to think, like, how would you think about, say, another thing that a lot of people have, diabetes.
Yeah.
When somebody first becomes a diabetic, there's times when they manage it really well.
Yeah.
There's times when they don't and their blood sugar's all over the place, and there's a time of adjusting to that. But then when it's well controlled, they manage fine. But sometimes, even still, they don't, and they have to have some time out. And I just think that I don't have a problem with my sugar levels. Yeah. It's just my brain.
Yeah. So helpful.
So I take medication. I'm happy to, share that. And it's managed well. But when it doesn't, just need to go out and rest and
listen to your body.
Listen to my body.
Robin, thank you for your candour and for these stories, your insights into church life. I have enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. I find you a most interesting, stimulating person. I was with Robin in Memphis a few months ago with Innes McSween, another one of our church planters. We had a great time.
We did.
We were walking in Memphis.
We were singing the song.
What happened in Memphis stays in Memphis. But it's really good. Folks, again, thank you for joining us for this edition of the podcast. Whether you're watching it in video or listening to it, maybe on your jogging or in the car, we are so glad to have you with us. Please keep listening to us. Tell other folk about the podcast. We'd love to see our influence, our listenership go wide. Thank you and have a great day.